Ranil Wickremesinghe requested that the staff-level delegation from financial institutions visit Colombo as soon as possible to finalize the staff-level agreement. Sri Lankan Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe has urged IMF Chief Kristalina Georgieva to send a team to Colombo as soon as possible so that a staff-level agreement could be finalized, as his cash-starved government is seeking to find USD 6 billion to keep the country afloat for the next 6 months. During his talks with the IMF Managing Director on Tuesday, Wickremesinghe requested that the staff-level delegation from the IMF visit Sri Lanka as soon as possible so that the staff-level agreement could be finalized. Online portal News First LK reported on Wednesday, quoting a statement issued by the Prime Minister. The statement said that Georgieva expressed her willingness to support Sri Lanka in these difficult times. An IMF team will arrive in Sri Lanka on June 20 to begin discussions on the staff-level agreement, political sources told Daily Mirror a short while ago. During their visit, the team will discuss with the President and the Prime Minister, who is also the Finance Minister. Sources said that Prime Minister Wickremesinghe is looking to finalize the staff-level agreement during the visit, reported by Jamila Hussain. Officials from the International Monetary Fund are scheduled to visit Colombo soon to meet in person and hold discussions to help defuse the country's economic crisis. IMF spokesman Gary Rice said it was planned to do so in the coming weeks. He added that he was expected to engage in policy discussions on the program supported by the International Monetary Fund. Gary Rice also stressed that the International Monetary Fund is committed to assisting Sri Lanka in this challenging time, in line with the policies of the International Monetary Fund. He said IMF is closely monitoring the current economic crisis, the debt crisis, and the humanitarian impact of the situation in Sri Lanka. The tide over the turmoil, Sri Lanka will need about $3.3 billion for fuel imports, $900 million for food, $250 million for cooking gas, and $600 million for fertilizer this year, the Prime Minister Wickremesinghe told Parliament. The central bank has estimated the economy will contract by 3.5% in 2022, Wickremesinghe said, but added that he was confident growth and could return with a robust reform package, debt restructuring, and international support.
Clearly, Sri Lanka facing very difficult economic conditions and severe balance of payments problems. We are deeply concerned about the impact of the ongoing crisis, and particularly, again, the humanitarian concern, the impact on people, and particularly the poor and the vulnerable groups. So we are monitoring that situation very closely. Try and respond to your specific questions. We are planning, the IMF is planning an in-person mission to Colombo in the coming weeks to engage on policy discussions on the program, building on the technical discussions that we already held with the authorities in Sri Lanka. That was back in May.
That was the report given to the media by IMF spokesman Jerry Rice. At the conclusion of the mission, the IMF team issued the following statement. The IMF team held technical discussions on a comprehensive reform package to restore macroeconomic stability and debt sustainability. The team made good progress in assessing the economic situation and in identifying policy priorities to be taken going forward. The discussions focused on restoring fiscal sustainability while protecting the vulnerable and the poor, ensuring the credibility of the monetary policy and exchange rate regimes, preserving financial sector stability and structural reforms to enhance growth and strengthen governance. We expect that these discussions will help the authorities formulate their reform program. Julie Chung, Ambassador in Sri Lanka. The subject matter discussed was to learn more about the US-SL relationships and how work with local partners supports the aspirations of the Sri Lankan people. Interview was given with Indivari Anuwatha, Colombo-based broadcaster for Other Narrator.
The positive steps Sri Lanka has taken in seeking assistance from the International Monetary Fund, saying that the United States, as one of the largest stakeholders of the IMF, wants to support Sri Lanka. She said this will not only open up financing opportunities for international financial institutions and multilateral banks, but individual banks as well. The ambassador, meanwhile, highlighted as critical for all creditors be given equal treatment as the country moved towards the IMF debt restructuring and financial reforms. Here are some excerpts from an interview I had with the US ambassador earlier today. How can the US support Sri Lanka in expanding our export market to the US?
I think as the largest export market to Sri Lanka, again, as Sri Lanka needs more growth and more foreign exchange, that's where the future lies, to continue growing upon that export market. To have strong exports, you have to have a strong political stability and food and fuel to make sure that manufacturers are able to create those products. So we want to grow that export market. We have discussions in the past, and we hope to renew those because there's great potential. And in terms of renewable energy, in terms of green growth, I think the future is green economy and renewable energy. And I'm very excited that this has a huge potential. You have plenty of sun, you have plenty of wind here in Sri Lanka. I think renewable green energy is where so many U.S. companies would be interested in coming in to Sri Lanka. We have a great USAID 5-year program on renewable energy. We want to help, again, build out the institutions, the regulatory frameworks, the laws and policies, and the due processes so that companies will want to come in. We're specifically working on solar and possibly a floating solar project. Again, that's very feasible here in Sri Lanka. There are companies that are really interested in coming into Sri Lanka to do that. And when there's so much obstacles or red tape to renewable energy, there needs to be a fresh, renewed look at how to attract that. And not only from the United States, there are many European countries also very strong in renewable energy space. We're also looking at electric tuk-tuk, something that's very simple and practical. And given the current crisis, that's why I believe there's an opportunity here. There's an opportunity for people to think anew and think afresh about what renewable energy can do for Sri Lanka in the future.
How does the United States view this situation? Are you happy and content with the way Sri Lanka has transitioned in managing this political crisis?
I think that the new Prime Minister has a daunting task ahead of him. And amidst this crisis, you really need that political stability. I go back to that again. When you have a table, you need all 4 legs to be standing. You can't have a lopsided table. So that's why political stability, economic stability goes so much hand in hand. We've welcomed the steps to go to the IMF, to hire the debt and legal advisors. Those are positive steps. I think the Prime Minister also started off early in his term being very transparent and honest with the public about the challenges at hand and what he intends to do. So we hope he continues to communicate very regularly and transparently to the country about what his plans are and his solutions. So initial steps, I think, are very positive. Again, working with the international community, with international financial institutions, the World Bank and IMF and others, This is a time when all the countries, we need to come together and support and help Sri Lanka in this very tough period.
How does the United States believe Sri Lanka can work within this framework with the IMF and other international and bilateral partners to overcome this situation?
Sri Lanka has made the right decision to go to the IMF, in my opinion. Maybe they could have done it sooner, but now that decision has been made to take important steps for reforms, that the IMF has laid out several reform structures. And again, the Prime Minister has already taken a few steps already in that direction. As one of the largest stakeholders in IMF, the United States wants to support Sri Lanka as it takes these steps, and that'll open up financing opportunities not only from international financial institutions and multilateral banks, but individual countries as well. And as it moves towards these IMF debt restructuring and financial reforms, it's so critical that all creditors have comparable, equal treatment. And that's one of the very important components that many countries who undergo an IMF program have to deal and address, because one country cannot get a special deal. All countries really must come together and show their support to Sri Lanka.
At the same time, India requested that Sri Lanka treat all creditors the same and no favors be made to China.
First of all, I don't think it's just an Indian concern. This is a concern amongst all creditors, that creditors be treated equally and comparably. And that is a common standard at the IMF. And we've seen instances around the world in different countries where certain companies and countries did not want that equal treatment and they wanted special favorable treatments.
Hope this video talk about the dealings with IMF to seek their assistance to bail out the financial crisis in Sri Lanka was useful. Let's meet again for further talks. Stay safe and goodbye for now.